Good evening, internet world. Checking in for day 8 of the vlog. Today's Tuesday. Last week we started Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. Day 10. Wow. Look at that. We're already at day 10. Trying to keep the streak alive. Today, I wanted to talk about a book that I just cracked open. This is on front-facing camera mode, so you just have to read it backwards. This book is called The Constitution of Liberty by F.A. Hayek. He is also the author of The Road to Serfdom, which I own and started but have not made any real progress on. But I bought them both at the same time. And I actually I can't find The Road to Serfdom right now. So as I was kind of cycling through the different books that I'm reading all at the same time, I picked this one up and it grabbed my attention right away. I think maybe even more than The Road to Serfdom. I think the idea of the thesis of The Road to Serfdom being explaining the long haul march that we're on or could be on that could lead to collectivism or socialism, communism, or the restraining of our freedoms and liberties that we have come to maybe take for granted if we've grown up in the States, and that have been eroded away over the last couple of generations. And so I feel like I already buy that narrative. And so the idea of digging deeper into that narrative to really understand the nitty-gritty of why we're on the path that we're on just doesn't appeal to me at this particular moment. I'm sure it will. I need to circle back around to it and definitely get that one under my belt so that I understand all of the nuance of his argument and the fine details of what picture he's painting, right? So I don't want to dismiss it before I even read it. But what excited me about this one, and having just cracked it open and getting a couple of pages under my belt, what's exciting is this is kind of what I would imagine. Again, speaking out of pocket, not having read the other one, but imagine this being somewhat of a mirror image to that, right? And he even lays out in the beginning that that he's going to paint a picture of what an ideal society would look like. What policies should we pursue, and how would you, if you could wave a magic wand, create a society with the most freedom, with the most liberty. And so I've only cracked into it a couple pages in, but a handful of quotes are already starting to jump out. So I decided, which I haven't necessarily done in a long time, to pull out the old highlighter. And I figured, hey, this one is almost like professional development. I feel like this one is like a textbook, but not that I'm being forced to read, that I want to read, that I want to just dissect all the information out of it. And again, with doing this project, I kind of want to report back as I go and share any little lessons that I pick up along the way. So I figured that the old highlighter would be helpful in that scenario. So to jump right into it, just wanted to, again, I'm in the beginning, but I've already highlighted a number of quotations, and I figured they were worth sharing, and we'll go from there. So to dive right into it, I would have to be already at the correct page, which I am not. So I will flip to it, and here we go. We're in part 1, the value of freedom. And he opens it with a quote. All right, chapter 1 is liberty and liberties, which he makes a distinction between the two. And so what he's doing in this first chapter again is just defining what does he mean by liberty, which I think is important because the opposite or differing opinions and philosophies can kind of co-opt this language but twist it and turn it to mean something else, and then it gets confusing because you're hearing the word freedom or you're hearing the word liberty or equality or these other terms, but they're twisted and used in a way to mean something completely different than what this philosophy means. And he goes into that here. But just as far as definitions go, the first thing that I highlighted was it so happens that the meaning of freedom that we have adopted seems to be the original meaning of the word. Man, or at least European man, enters history divided into free and unfree, and this distinction had a very definite meaning. The freedom of the free may have differed widely, but only in the degree of an independence which the slave did not possess at all. It meant always the possibility of a person's acting according to his own decisions and plans, in contrast to the position of one who was irrevocably subject to the will of another, who by arbitrary decision could coerce him to act or not act in specific ways. And then the part that I highlighted, which was this last sentence, was the time-honored phrase by which freedom has often been described is therefore, quote, independence of the arbitrary will of another, end quote. So it was only that last sentence that I highlighted, but I figured I'd give a bit of context and a bit of the leading up to that statement. And I think my mind, again, just with each page as I'm diving into this, is already exploding. And even just that definition, or to have that definition somewhere in a compartment of my mind, that it's independence of the arbitrary will of another, is starting to formulate what has been my issue over this last year. Why have I so passionately become aware of the pressures that we've been under over the course of the last year plus, and why did I have this visceral reaction to it? These mask mandates, these business closures, because I was not, and many of my loved ones were not independent of the arbitrary will of another. We were, for a period of time, totally affected and quote unquote dependent. I don't know if the opposite, but we were definitely affected by the arbitrary will of another. The arbitrary decisions of some authority, quote unquote, down in Olympia, who decided that, or that office with advisors coming to the meeting saying, hey, you know what we need to do? Bars can stay open, but they have to close after 10. You can eat at a restaurant, but you have to wear a mask from the door to your seat. And one that's even more vulgar, that I probably shouldn't say, but the King County Public Health Office issued a social media post that recommended that people who were going to have relations with their significant other should do so through a shower curtain with a hole in it. That's not even a joke. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know if you can still find it on their Instagram. I wouldn't be surprised if they left it, because they were so emboldened to impose their arbitrary will on the people of this city and state and county and whatever, that why wouldn't they keep it in our face and just laugh at us? And so it's these people who would post something like that are imposing their will on restaurants, businesses, nail salons. Horrifying stuff. Horrifying. So again, to have this definition, now I know why. It's not just being subject to someone else's will that fires up my soul. It's being subject to someone else's arbitrary will. And I got into an argument today. I'm posting on a different social media platform, and I posted a video saying, hey, here's how you solve the housing crisis in Washington. You abolish zoning, you abolish the building code, and I had another one and I don't remember it right now. But I had a lot of people right off the bat taking issue with abolish the building code. Don't you know that's for our safety? Don't you know that every code is in place? It's written in blood through loss of life or tragedy or fire or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So let's go into the Seattle Building Code. Let's look at the different chapters. Oh, chapter 12, interior finishes. That's interesting. What's in there? Oh, section 4 and 5 of chapter 12 or something is the lighting requirements for a dwelling. So if you're going to have natural light, you have to have at least up to 8% natural light. But if you're going to have artificial light, the room needs to be on average throughout the entirety of the room lit up to 10 foot candles on average. Well, why not 9? Why not 11? Why not 15? Why not 7? And to go even to a different section, because different people were commenting, so I had to come up with new examples. If you go into chapter 2 or 8 or something, it has a building code for malls. It has different requirements for malls. Okay, I'm sure there's some fire hazards in malls. There's probably some reasonable building codes. Oh, there's a section on kiosks in a mall, that they can be spaced no closer than 20 feet apart. Okay? Why 20 feet? Why not 19? I mean, you get the point, right? Arbitrary. It's an arbitrary line in the sand. And I think it would be easy to maybe make the claim, the next logical response, well, you got to draw the line somewhere, right? Do you, though? Do you have to draw does the state have to draw the line somewhere? Or would the market draw different lines for different scenarios, and through voluntary action between free parties, a builder and a customer, those arrangements would be worked out on their own? What if I want a cheaper house because I plan to put lighting, I plan to put lamps throughout my whole house? Be significantly cheaper than wiring in a bunch of can lights throughout the whole thing. So why should a third party that has no interest and no skin in the game, i.e. the local building, I mean, who would, L&I or whoever enforces building codes, why should they get in between me and my builder and say, no, I'm not concerned with what either of you want or what's in the best interest of either of you. This room is going to be lit to 10 foot candles. Otherwise, it's illegal. It seems a little absurd, I agree. Moving right along. Another highlight, we'll just get right into the highlight. In this sense, quote, freedom, end quote, refers solely to a relationship of men to other men, and the only infringement on it is coercion by men. Okay, so it's a person-to-person thing. That jumped out at me for whatever reason. The one last point I was going to make on the building code scenario is it's not a harmless, it's not a laughable subject. I bring up, and I looked obviously for the most absurd cases, but just only to point out the silliness of it and the arbitrariness of it. But it's not harmless because every line that's put into a building code, now that's something a builder has to comply with. And so now that's something that they have to spend resources on the front end to ensure that they're complying with it. And then they have to slow down production because they have to allow a government official to come in and inspect it to ensure that they're in compliance with every last line. So the amount of resources and the longer it takes to get from initiating a building project to completion, the more expensive it is. So now you're creating barriers for entry for people to build homes. So now you're limiting the supply of homes, which is going to increase demand, jack up the price. It makes it harder to build a home, which makes it harder to buy a home. So again, if you want to talk about we have less living units in the state than we need, and therefore we have a housing crisis, well, then we need more dwelling units. And the way that you do that is make it easier to build dwelling units. Is not even rocket science. It's so simple, even I can understand it, right? And this is having just a little taste, again, of being involved in small business, being involved in a small way in some semblance of the trades and construction. In only one project that I've been on has allowed me to see the roadblocks that a local little government office can create from purchasing a project, a condemned house that is serving no function, no one can live there, a condemned house purchased by investor and builder looking to create value in the neighborhood, create a new dwelling unit for a citizen of the state, delayed years. It's a wetland, there's a stream, so you can't extend the footprint. It has to be reviewed, and your initial plan has to be reviewed. The amount of red tape and stumbling blocks for a small project like that, which makes it just not even worth it. Again, I'm not saying it to complain from a personal perspective, because ultimately it's the cost of doing business, and hey, it's part of the learning curve, and once you get the system down, I'm sure you're able to refine that and work around it and make it happen. I'm not saying it can't be done. It's not a complaint of, oh, woe is me, we can't do it. But I'm just using it as an example to point out the added cost, and not just, it's not a money thing, right? Because it would be easy to go, money, who cares? It's resources. It's valuable resources that then raise the price of that dwelling and make it harder to build it. And then you, the consumer, because we're all consumers of housing, it raises all of our prices, right? So it has a real effect. And geez, I had one more thing, but I forgot. No, I didn't forget it. And so that's on the building side. And then on the just the straight up business side, the amount of compliance, the cost of compliance, being a part of a small business, I have seen with my own eyes what a ratio of a role within a company that needs to keep its full attention on compliance with government rules, regulations, making sure we pay every little last tax, nickel and dime, employees' taxes are taken out of their paycheck beforehand. almost an entire role in a small business focused on making sure that we're in compliance, because otherwise, when we get audited, we would be in a position to get penalized, et cetera, et cetera. So you just have to think, how much more productive and how many more services would our business be able to provide if that role was able to turn its entire attention to not making sure that we're following all the arbitrary rules of our local government and the federal government, but making the business more efficient, providing better customer service to our customers, analyzing the finances to go, hey, if we're more profitable here, we can pay our employees more here and therefore have better retention. So again, it's a cost that we all bear as consumers, and we're able to provide less services, right? So that's limiting our ability. Again, do not get me wrong. It's not a complaint. It's not a woe is me scenario, but it's just an example. It's an example that I see every day, and I go, wow, imagine how much even more clients, how many more clients we could serve, how many more jobs we could get done if we were able to turn all of our attention towards productivity. And as a byproduct of that, again, this just full circle of us all prospering more, how much more free time will we have to be charitable, to be generous, to use our time for that little old lady who can't afford our services. But right now, because we have to be because we have to make every minute count, we don't have time. We do. We make time for it sometimes. But I'm just saying we would have more time for things like that, and every business would. So moving right along. Another quote, in this sense, it usefully reminds us that the infringements on liberty consist largely in people's being prevented from doing things, while coercion emphasizes their being made to do particular things. Both aspects are equally important. To be precise, we should probably define liberty as the absence of restraint and constraint. Unfortunately, both these words have come also to be used for influences on human action that do not come from other men. And this is back to a highlighted portion. We went in a highlight, out of a highlight. We're back in a highlight. And it is too easy to pass from defining liberty as the absence of restraint to defining it as, quote, absence of obstacles to realization of our desires, end quote. Or even more generally, quote, as the absence of external impediments, end quote. This is equivalent to interpreting it as effective power to do whatever we want. Very interesting point. Liberty does not mean the power to do whatever we want. It is the right to not have someone else infringe upon our right to do particular things. Okay, well, we got a few more highlights here. Been at it 20-something minutes. So we'll call it for tonight, and we will carry on with more highlights later on down the road. So all that being said, excited about this book. Maybe this vlog will keep me honest and keep me motivated to carry through the entire book and get everything that I can out of it. So with all that being said, have a good evening. Hope you're having a good commute to work, or doing laundry, or going for a walk, or whatever it is you're doing. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Cheers.